Hello, my name is Stephanie Sinclair, and my colleagues and I are based at the Open University and have been part of an international research project that has developed and tested an approach to religious, historical and citizenship education across Europe and also including Northern Ireland. And the educational methods developed as part of this project, as well as the wider findings of our research, might well be of interest to a number of ongoing policy discussions in the Northern Irish context, and they have been mentioned before as part of presentations as well, including the Race Equality Bill, the 16 to 18 Educational Training Bill, the November Supreme Court ruling about religious education in Northern Ireland, and the draft framework for race relations. Our project findings are also relevant in the wider context of assessment and curriculum reviews in other parts of the UK, such as current considerations to introduce a national curriculum for religious education in England. Our project is called Retopia, and that stands for Religious Toleration and Peace. It aims to support young people to move beyond generalizations and stereotypes about religious diversity and learn with history, and that means that they learn to make constructive and critical connections between the past, the present, and their own experiences, and start to think outside the box about religious toleration and peace, and develop a range of skills, including religious, digital and media literacy skills. And the focus is here not just about teaching facts about religious traditions, for example, or historical facts, but also to develop skills that including communication skills and team working skills, encouraging young people to work effectively in teams with others who might bring different views, experiences, or skills to the table. Our project has focused on young people aged 12 to 18, but we've also started to engage with primary school children as well in sort of later phases of the project. Our project has involved a wide range of academic and non-academic partners from across Europe. It was initially funded by the European Union and with later phases funded by the Callum St. Gabriel's Trust and the Open University Open Societal Challenges Programme. And as part of this project, we have developed and tested an educational method where young people are supported in making short, 3-minute-long documentary-style films. We call them docutubes. And through this process, young people are actively engaged in learning about and reflecting on religious diversity in the past and present, and relate this to their own experiences to develop a wide range of skills. The method involves 4 different phases: engage, plan, create, and reflect. In the first phase, young people engage with a small selection of bite-sized resources from an online collection on our website. We call it the Retopia Clipping Collections, which to stimulate discussion about different approaches to religious toleration and peace, and encourage young people to make connections between the past and present. Prompted by those discussions, the young people then plan, film, and edit a short film in groups of 3 to 4 young people, show to the rest of the group, and reflect on the process. The entire process takes about 13 to 20 hours in total, and that can be delivered either in the form of 2 to 3 full days of project days or workshop days, or shorter sessions integrated into lessons over several weeks. I've mentioned the Retopia Clippings Collection. That's a free resource that we've developed with historians from across Europe. It includes more than 400 resources, including short texts, maps, images, and videos that explore different aspects of religious diversity, toleration, and peace in a really wide range of cultural and historical contexts. It also includes contextual information and questions that can be used in lessons. It's organized according to 12 different themes, but we also provide narratives that teachers can use to connect the different clippings to each other. The process of making the docutubes can be really well connected with field visits, such as visits to local historical sites, religious buildings or museums, but equally they can also work really well if young people stay in the classroom. And we have given participants a really wide range of different approaches that they can take to this, a lot of choices, including interviews, drawings, maps, objects, religious sites, buildings, or local historical sites that they can visit. A whole range of different approaches, and we've given them a lot of creative freedom in terms of how to approach this task, and found that our participants have really fully embraced and often really excelled at it. Filmmaking is a really collaborative process, so people can take a lot of different roles in the process, in front and behind the camera. And we felt that that was a really important aspect of this. Between 2020 and 2025, we've run 20 workshops across Europe and also in Jordan with young people aged 12 to 22, more than 200 young people. And we've evaluated them through small group interviews, participant observation, questionnaires, an analysis of the films they've produced. And feedback we've received was really overwhelmingly very positive. For example, of those who completed the feedback questionnaires, you can see some results here. 84% agreed that Retopia had helped them to think about religious peace and toleration in new ways. 87% felt that making a docutube film helped them learn about religious peace and toleration. 96% said that they enjoyed making a docutube film, and that's a really important finding because it really reflected the level of joy and engagement in the process that really was palpable in all of our workshops. And as part of our project, we've developed a number of free resources, including an online course for teachers so they can use this method in their own teaching. And the Retopia clippings collection is also available for free on the Retopia website. And it doesn't have to be used in connection with the filmmaking process. The resources can be used in lessons in many different other ways. And the Open University also has free resources on OpenLearn on religion, belief and world, on our religion, belief and worldview hub that might be of interest to teachers and educators in this field. I'm now handing over to my colleague John Maiden, who will say more about how we've run the docutube workshops in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Steffi. Following the Horizon 2020 funded stage of the project, we wanted to explore the potential for docutubes to work in peace-building contexts. And we've thus far had 3 workshops in Belfast. One in a controlled school, one in a Catholic maintained school, and one shared education workshop involving both of these schools. And just to say that actually going into these schools was a real highlight of my whole experience of the Retopia project. We met some great young people. Our approach was broadly the same as in workshops in other countries. Across the workshops, we used a mix of historical and contemporary examples of diversity and toleration and intolerance, both from the local context and elsewhere. So, for example, we got the young people to engage with historical sources relating to Roger Williams and his approach to freedom of religion and freedom of conscience in the formation of Rhode Island, the Rhode Island colony in North America. We also got young people to agree with the look at parts of the text of the Good Friday and the Belfast Agreement. Alongside historical text, we looked at contemporary examples of toleration and intolerance. So, for example, sources relating to Israel and Palestine, which was clearly a very live issue for the young people. Changing attitudes towards Muslims in Liverpool since the arrival of the footballer Mo Salah. And this opened a way into a discussion of the new religious diversity in Northern Ireland, which we've already heard about from James and Rebecca, which was particularly salient for the final workshop, which followed the anti-migrant riots last year. Alongside the range of historical, contemporary and information sources, the young people had a chance to interview various religious leaders, A Church of Ireland bishop and a Roman Catholic priest attended the shared education workshop, and a Presbyterian minister was interviewed in the Catholic maintained school. Importantly, though, we also invited young people to share their own everyday experiences of toleration and intolerance. They wanted to speak, for example, about parts of their city where they felt safe and where they didn't feel safe, or how they might choose to dress in different parts of their city. Members of the team made a number of observations across the workshops. Young people saw the value in reflecting critically on religious diversity and toleration and intolerance, past, present, and in their own experiences. And we found it was important to bring together the examination of critical sources, texts, photographs, etc., alongside their own lived experiences. So this included discussion around the achievements and limitations of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, and various students commented that it was not common for them to have a chance to discuss these texts and reflect on the impact of them on their lives. Jumping to the last point, the young people's engagement with issues of toleration and peace in Northern Ireland was enhanced by setting this in the wider context of thinking more broadly about meanings of toleration and tolerance in history in the present day, thinking about bias and discernment in relation to information that they read, and by considering examples both from Northern Ireland and in other contexts, such as the founding of Rhode Island and Israel and Palestine. We found that the opportunity to consider different generational experiences of conflict and peace in Northern Ireland was valued by students. The experience of some of the young people was that the Troubles was something that was generally not discussed at home. They found a value in talking to an older generation who had experienced the Troubles, and they were able to put these experiences alongside their own experiences of tolerance and intolerance. They demonstrated willingness and ability, including in the shared education workshop, to articulate their personal experiences of toleration and intolerance. And I was surprised at how unawkward these discussions were in the shared education workshop. And this rather matches the findings from workshops with other European young people, where it seems they often felt more relaxed talking about sensitive and controversial topics than their educators. And I suspect that this has something to do with the effectiveness of the DocuTubes process, the creation of safe spaces for broader discussion around religious diversity, the focus on a range of historical and geographical contexts, which underline that questions about peace and toleration are not unique necessarily to Northern Ireland, and the shared creative task of making a film, encouraging group ownership and peer-to-peer moderation. So, just briefly on some of the feedback. The feedback that we got from these workshops was broadly comparable with other European workshops. We also found that 83% of the young people agreed or strongly agreed that the experience of working with young people from different religious backgrounds was valuable to them. Young people highlighted the value of making new friends in different communities. And I'll end this section with just some quotes from the young people. I got to see a different culture and a different side of things. It helped me to understand a different point of view that can change mine. I do not think toleration is a strong enough word. We should not just put up with other people. We must celebrate them in all their uniqueness. Finally, peace is fragile. As a society, we need to be proactive as we continue to build better relationships between different communities. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague John Wolfe to talk about policy implications.
The final section of our presentation is talking about some of the recommendations for policy that we think follow from them. And the first one is really to reiterate and affirm a point that I think came very strongly out of James and Rebecca's presentation, the importance of religious education reflecting the diversity of our society. And I mentioned here the importance also of including a recognition of non-religious value systems as well as religious ones, given the growing number of people in Northern Ireland and elsewhere who say they have no religion. And the evidence is that young people themselves want this. And if this seems a challenge to be teaching such a diversity of worldviews and belief systems, I'd emphasise that it's important to be teaching skills quite as much, perhaps even more than facts, the ability to empathise and engage with different viewpoints, rather than to overload the curriculum with the detail of numerous different religious traditions. Secondly, I would make a more specific plug for our own DocuTube methodology that Stephanie was describing. We do think it has real value in facilitating deep learning around these issues, and we have some evidence from feedback we gathered from former participants from interviews we did with them 6 months on from the events. And it also teaches them other skills in the process of making the DocuTube short film. They learn about media literacy in creating a media product themselves. It also teaches critical thinking and the importance of team working and good communication, both between themselves and with others they might, say, be interviewing as part of their film. And it also is a flexible methodology. It works with different age groups and indeed with neurodivergent young people. And as Stephanie says, it can be delivered in different timetabling modes, and we could expand on that when we come to the questions if people would like. And we would also maintain that it is essentially resource neutral in that it can use equipment that schools are already likely to have, such as iPads and PCs for other curriculum areas. And as Stephanie mentioned, we have a free online course that teachers can use to develop their own skills and thinking in this area. Widening the focus again and thinking about the wider implications of our research, we would stress the importance of, however it's done, to facilitate young people having a shared space in which to learn from and to understand each other, learning from each other's experiences, coming to reflect on why people are different from each other and how they can respect each other and indeed learn to disagree well. And we had some examples of the films that young people made where there were divergent viewpoints. For example, from a strongly committed evangelical Christian and a young person who had an atheist viewpoint, but they nevertheless sort of represented their different views effectively in the film and also demonstrated that they came out friends at the end of it. But that process can be explored in filmmaking as we've done, but there may be, other mechanisms that can be explored and used, such as the use of drama, developing a podcast, as indeed one group of young people in a Northern Ireland school did as part of our project, or a PowerPoint, for example, as a team product in all the cases. And adult ownership is important, adult oversight, especially in setting ground rules at the outset and reminding young people of good practice in terms of debate with different views, to respect the person even if you disagree with the view that is being expressed. But our experience has been that even where there are different views within a group, but the group ownership of the shared task is important in nevertheless leading to a very positive outcome in the end. Our fourth recommendation is, again, echoes something that James and Rebecca said about the value of positive engagement with history. In part, challenging prejudices that some young people may have about the past, but also to offer a kind of outside-the-box perspective on the present. And as has been said, we had the observation that young people in Northern Ireland want to know more about the past of their own society, and sometimes find, I think, that parents and indeed teachers are reluctant to talk about it. And surely gaining that understanding is one of the best means for ensuring that conflict does not renew in the future. But our mantra as a team is about learning with history rather than from history. In other words, history stimulates reflection on the present. It doesn't offer us nice models to follow in the present. And our final recommendation, which in a way runs through others and perhaps is surprising, but it is that we should be trusting young people themselves more. There are risks of what young people may come out through this kind of process in terms of unauthorized sharing or conflict coming to the surface in a group like this. But our experience has been that with effective ground rules, adult oversight, and giving young people a sense of shared purpose in the task, that they behave more responsibly than we often suppose. And we put the argument for trying to work with youth culture, encouraging them to be self-critical about it, rather than to see youth culture as the enemy that we need to challenge. But again, to reiterate the importance of effective monitoring and raising awareness of the risk. And again, there's more specific guidance on this in our online resources. A final slide is just to say something about our ongoing activity. Engagement with primary schools. We're trying to move down in the age range and build on awareness of the early impact of generational traumas and attitudes. Also to work with home educators, where young people may well be outside mainstream education. And also to promote dissemination to teachers and to teacher educators. And most recently, we've begun to engage also with peace education. So we very much would welcome further partnerships and engagements in Northern Ireland, especially thinking at a strategic level of how we can get this methodology and ideas more widely adopted. So thank you all very much for your attention.